Mishnah Yomi continues, beginning the third chapter in Eiruvin, Mishnah Aleph. Bekol me'arvin u'mishtatvin. With anything, meaning any food, we can make an eruv and a shituf. First of all, arvin here, the eruv, is an eruv techumin, the eruv of the boundary. As we know, there's a limited amount of space we can walk up to on Shabbos, as we talked about in Masechet Shabbat. And if you want to extend that ability to travel, to walk in a certain direction, you could place some of your food, for example, towards the west, and then you'd have 2,000 amot to the west past that food. So we're talking about that kind of food, because it was an eruv chatzerot, where you're joining together chatzerot. They use bread for that, according to the Gemara. So here, ma'arvin is eruv techumin. Mishtatvin, we talked about in the first Mishnah, it's a shituf, a partnership of mavuot, where they're joining together that they can all carry in the alley by sharing food. So any food works, chutz min hamayim u'min hamelach, but not water and not salt. Those are not really food. Now the Gemara in 27, Daf 27, adds mushrooms and truffles and fungus, kamei and pitriol, so that these things don't really nourish. They're not eruvable. The Mishnah continues, hakol nikach bekesev meiser. Similarly, a little bit of review from our Meiser Sheni days. Anything can be purchased with Meiser Sheni money, chutz min hamayim min hamelach, but not water and not salt. The Bartner here actually adds it has to be pre-mipri, something that is growing and propagating, and also gidule karka, something that grows out of the ground, originates from the ground. Animals do count. So we talked about buying meat and wine back in Meiser Sheni. It was less than a year ago. It's a little chazara. And the Mishnah continues, hanoder min mazon. Someone takes a neder against mazon, nourishment. Muter b'mayim melach. He can still have water and salt. So the Barner points out, he said, made a neder kol hazon alai konam. He makes a neder against anything that is zon, because mazon, the word mazon, is like mezainos, is like the 5 species of grain. So mazon means mezainos. So here the letter was kol hazon, anything that nourishes. So water and salt are not included. Now the Mishnah adds another detail of making this eruv. Me'arvin lenazir b'yayin. You can make an eruv techumin, again, for a nazir, someone who has to abstain from wine, using a barrel of wine. Surprising. Even though he can't drink it, he could share it with other people. Partner adds he could ask a annulment on his vow of nazirut, also Yisrael b'truma, and a regular Yisrael with truma that only Kohanim could eat, because again Kohanim could take in this food. Sumcha says if he's Yisrael, you have to use chulin, regular non-sacred produce, to make his eruv. L'kohen bebeita pras. For a Kohen, you could leave his eruv techumin in a beita pras. Now beita pras is a field with a piece. There's a piece of bone in here somewhere. There used to be a kever, a grave, and they didn't know that, and they went ahead and plowed the field. So now we're worried there might be fragments of bone in this field, and if the Kohen touches that, he becomes tameh, and that's asur deraisa. He's not allowed to become tameh. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, afilu bebeit kvarot, even in a graveyard itself, you could put food for a Kohen. The Kohen can't go into the graveyard, but you could put his eruv techum food into the graveyard. Then he can walk 2,000 amot past it on Shabbat. Rabbi Yehuda adds that technically he could go in with a chutz, with a chatzitza, with a partition, like go in inside a box or a carriage with a floor, and there's a chatzitza between him and the airspace of the graveyard, and then technically he could still eat his eruv. The Gehati adds an interesting point that even for Yisrael, it's forbidden to benefit from a graveyard. Kever is asur b'hana, so he says that because, according to Yehuda, it's allowed, even for Yisrael, to put his eruv techum in there, because an eruv techum can only be made for a mitzvah, like you need to go to the drasha, or the daf yomi, or a seuda, so that's why you need to extend the techum, and mitzvah's lav lahenu nitnu, mitzvah is not technically an enjoyment, so it'd be allowed even for Yisrael to put his food in the cemetery. Onto Mishnah Beit. And the main concept of Mishnah Beit is that food that no one can eat is not going to be a valid eruv. So ma'arvin b'demai. We can use demai. We had a masechet about demai. It is a produce from an Ama Aretz where we're not sure he took all the ties. Truma Gedola he took, but did he take Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, Trumas Meiser? Not sure. So we have to tithe it out of Suffolk. We can't eat it. But if someone we've seen is a soldier on a mission, or the military, or he's very poor, then we don't require them to separate tithes before eating demai, so they could eat it. So you could use it for an eruv. Meiser Rishon, Letrumato, Meiser Rishon, where they took the Trumas Meiser off the Meiser Rishon, even if they took that before the Truma Gedola, because the Leviim could eat that. Meiser Sheni v'hekdesh sheniftu, the second tithe, which is taken to Jerusalem to eat there, as we just mentioned that you can't buy water and salt with that. Or hekdesh, karbanos, animals that were going to be sacrifices that were redeemed. And this is even when they're redeemed by their owner, and the owner hasn't paid the chomesh, the additional 1/5 that he's supposed to pay, but he paid back the principal, so it's good to go. It can be eaten. The kohanim b'chola v'truma. Kohanim can use chala and truma. Aval lo betevel, but no one can use tevel. Tevel is produce where you have not taken the truma, you have not taken the tithes. Tevel is a mixture. Meiser Rishon Jelonet Lachumata, Meiser Rishon, where the Levi had got his Meiser Rishon, but he still has not taken his Trumat Meiser, is 10% of that. So Lamaisa, he still can't eat it until he takes his Trumas Meiser. V'lo b'ma'aser sheni v'hekdesh shelo niftu, and not Meiser Sheni, that's outside of Jerusalem, or Hekdesh, karbanos that have not been redeemed, they are not edible. Hasholeach eruvo, and now another topic related, someone who sends his eruv. So he wants to go 2,000 amot to the west to go to a special Daf Yomi convention on Shabbos. So he sends his eruv with someone else. What if it's biyad, cherish, shotev, katan? If it's in the hands of someone who is, cherish is both deaf and mute, so he's not considered to understand human language and have that intellectual development. Shote is someone who is mentally deranged or insane, lacking in dat. The katan. A katan might be perfectly normal and intellectual, but he's not considered a bar dat and a bar mitzvah for this purpose. Obiyad misha enamodib eruv. He sends it with someone who doesn't agree to the eruv. For example, the Kutim, the famous Kuthians or Samaritans, who accepted the Torah Shebeksav, but not the Torah Shebal Pei, and eruv is obviously Torah Shebal Pei, a innovation of Shlomo HaMelech and the later sages added on. So he doesn't agree to it. So for him to put your eruv techum down 2,000 amot to the west doesn't help you because he's just throwing some food down there. He's not actually establishing any eruv in any way. So that eino eruv, says the Mishnah. Ve'im amar la'acher, but if you told somebody else who's a gadol, who's a grown-up, who's a bardat, who's not a kuti, who's a normal God-fearing Jew who uses an eruv and accepts the concept of eruv, and lekablu mimeno, to accept the food from one of these eruv impaired individuals, harei ze eruv. That is a valid eruv. So you could send your katan child, your daughter who's 10 years old, to deliver your barrel of wine to someone who's a gadol and a bardat and a normal Jew, 2,000 amot to the west, so you can go to the convention on Shabbos. Shkoyach Rabotai, Shabbat Shalom.